going to hear in just a few minutes, and we'll bring Brent. Hello, hello. How's everybody doing? I hope everybody who comes in the chat. Um, we're glad to have you, and we're going to get started here in just a few minutes. And if you have a question, I just want to remind everybody to please, if you have a question or a comment that directly ties to our guests or anything that we're talking about, please highlight in all caps, and we'll get started here in just a few minutes. Waiting on Greg to show up. I don't know if he's going to make it or not. But he said his computer went out on him.
Oh,
yeah,
that's never a good thing.
Could be his HDMI cable, could be his graphics card, it could be all kinds of stuff. I'm gonna try to help him troubleshoot it when I have time.
Nice. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've got some. There's been a lot going on in the last week and a half. So I don't know how well you can hear me. Can you hear me better now, or
I can hear you. I can hear you fantastic right now.
Okay, cool.
You're actually nice and clear. All right. Welcome to the program. We're going to get started here in just a moment. But anyway, I'm ready for this.
Mm-hmm.
I was telling him I'm on I think it's chapter 7 or 8. It's really he goes by case. This book is amazing. So far, it's really good.
Yeah, I've been meaning to pick that book up.
It's pretty awesome. There's Greg.
There he is.
Hey, everybody.
Welcome. Salutations and welcome.
Glad to be here.
Yes, sir. I'm glad you made it. Let's talk about, after the podcast, we'll talk about your PC. See if we can get you up and running. Cool.
Because right now, it's like, as you can see, you can see the cursor, but it's just black. I don't know.
I'll introduce you, Greg, to Sarchie. We're gonna get started in just a second, and we'll get that way. We can we'll give it another minute, and then we'll start because we have until 11 p.m. today. I want to make sure he has plenty of time to say what's on his heart and mind. All right. My stepdaughter Haley, she was going to be a part of the program in the chat logs, and she's not going to make it tonight because she's had a lot of business. She's been really busy doing mommy stuff today, so she's really tired. Yeah. All right. I guess we'll go ahead and get started, and I want to welcome everybody to What Lies Beyond the podcast, and as usual, I'm the host, Mark Brenner, and then we have Michael and Greg, my co-hosts. I'm really thankful y'all are with me today. Thank you very much. And today we have a very special guest. His name is Ralph Sarchie. He is a 16 to 17-year-old year veteran of the NYPD. During the course of his work as a NYPD police officer, he ran across cases that involved diabolical possession, oppression, and infestation. We're going to hear all about that here and right now in just a moment when I bring him in. But I want to tell everybody that we're glad to have you. Hello, Elmo. What's up? We're glad to have all of you here. And I think without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump right into it. Ralph, thank you so much for being with us today, and welcome to What Lies Beyond.
Well, thanks for inviting me. Hey, listen, I just want to clear the record. It's 20 years. Somebody had written that I had 17 years and it stuck, I'm like, nah, I did 20 years.
Man, I didn't know that. I stand corrected. So that's 20 years.
That's those a 3 good years, chunk of professional years, man.
3 years is a long time in the NYPD,
Mm-hmm.
It's probably
long, hard 3 years.
And you also did some work overseas, correct? You did some contracting, served our country overseas in the Middle East. That's cool. We're grateful for your service in the PD and otherwise. We're grateful for it.
Oh, thank you.
Ralph, let's jump right into this, man. tell us just a little bit for our listeners who may not be familiar with you. So can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into doing what you call the work?
Well, yeah, it was a long process, actually. I started reading about UFOs and ghosts and all kinds of things. I was an avid reader when I was a young kid. And that stuck with me, into young adulthood and, till today. And I kept reading about the Warrens. Ed and Lorraine kept popping up in the books that I'm reading. So it was a lot of years later that I decided to make a phone call and reach out to them. And that's exactly what I did, and I got involved in the work pretty much at that point. That's a condensed version.
Right. And you have a book that you wrote a book called Delivers from Evil, which also became a major motion picture starring Eric Bana, a really good actor, Australian actor. I watched your movie. I was just, I don't get scared very easily with movies, but this is a movie I thought about for a couple of days after I watched it. It was pretty frightening. And I think,
yeah, really.
I think it was because I knew it was grounded in some reality, versus some of these other Hollywood embellishments that they put out. That's what was really scary, especially what was interesting in the movie. I'm about halfway through your book right now, and what I saw and noticed in the movie was interesting is the characters in it were soldiers or Marines that brought something back with them, and I've heard many stories like that. Entities called the Jinn, and some other people think.
I heard a
all
couple
the same.
stories. Yeah, I heard a couple of stories of soldiers in Iraq, Marines in Iraq, dealing with something of a preternatural nature. It scared the hell out of a lot of these guys. They just didn't know what to make of it. I spent 13 months over there, and I didn't. Fortunately, I didn't see anything, of that nature while I was there.
Wow. You started out. How did you meet how did the Warrens come into play? And your friend Joe, your friend. Can you tell us all about that?
Well, yeah. I had purchased a book called Satan's Harvest, and I read the book, and I read it in one sitting. I was on vacation. My oldest daughter was just born. She was about a month old. I'd gone out shopping for clothes, and I stopped at a bookstore. So I read Satan's Harvest, and I decided that I was going to reach out to Ed and Lorraine. So the next day I got a listing for them, and I called later on in the evening, and Lorraine answered the phone, and Ed was in Newfoundland at the time. And I spoke to her for about an hour, and I had already decided that I was going to, attempt to at least take one of their classes. So I had asked Lorraine if she had any literature to send me, and I gave her my address, and she said to me, "Oh, Ralph, hold on, there's something strange here." And that was the last thing I wanted to hear. I didn't want to hear Lorraine Warren tell me that there's something strange going on,
Yeah.
I'm sitting on the couch like, oh, man.
You're like, man, what did I get myself into?
So she comes back and she says, oh, take this man's name and number down. He lives in New York, and you might be able to speak with him. So I said, okay. And I took down the information. It just so happened that he lived 2 blocks away from where I was living. So, when I told Lorraine this, she's like, oh, well, I don't believe in coincidence. So I did reach out to Joe, and we became good friends. And, we started working with the Warrens at that point.
You also were close friends with Malachi Martin, Father Martin, rather.
Yeah.
He, I tell you what, I've listened to your interview with Art Bell a couple of times. I listened to all 7, I think it was 7 of them that he did regarding his work as a ordained exorcist and some things about the Vatican that he was taking issue with. I found it very interesting and eye-opening. How did you get involved with him?
Well, I had received a phone call from one of Ed and Lorraine Warren's investigators, who I was friends with. He's actually a traditional Catholic priest now. And he said, Ralph, could you pick up Father Malachi Martin and bring him up to Connecticut on such a date? I says, if I have to carry him on my back, the answer is yes. So I had obtained his phone number and I called him, and I felt that a prior meeting would be, most fruitful. So I set up a time to meet him in Manhattan. I know we put Spark Steakhouse in the book, but it wasn't. It was a restaurant, or it was a bar restaurant that Father Martin frequented quite often. So I didn't want to give that place up.
Sure.
And I had gone with Joe Forrester and another friend of mine who was a state parole officer who was involved, in the work with me. So we went, and I had a meeting with him, and we sat down, and it was probably one of the highlights of me entering the work, was actually meeting Father Martin. And it basically, I picked him up and drove him up to Connecticut. I had him in my car, just him and I, for, I believe it was an hour and a half up to Connecticut. So it was a 4-hour round trip with both of us, in the car. So that was a great time. And I was able to, to ask him a lot of questions because of, I read Hostage to the Devil. So, my mind was filled with questions on that, and he was gracious enough, to answer me on those questions,
Yes, absolutely. I'm going to read Hostage as soon as I'm finished with your book here, probably in the next day or two. I actually just bought both of them. Tell us, if you don't mind, Ralph. Tell us about how you approach a case and how the methods that you use to determine whether it's a case of demonic possession or something. We're getting some really weird noise in the mic. Really strange stuff.
You got a lot of static coming from your microphone.
Yeah.
I did hear the question though. Now, do you want to know about, because they handle differently, an infestation or a possession case? Because, they're two totally different things, and I handle them differently. Which one would you prefer?
So, whichever one you feel like talking about is fine. Absolutely. I want to hear it the way you want to give it to
All right.
me.
So, if I got a case of a suspected demonic possession, obviously I got to speak to the person. I don't handle cases third person. I have to have the intention of the person who's possessed needs to seek help of his own free will. That's the first step. That needs to happen. Once that takes place, I do an informal interview on the phone. And I want to know the person's spiritual background in this first initial conversation. And it's the same exact thing for, anything with infestations or oppressions. I have to know the spiritual condition of the person I'm dealing with. I have to know if they're baptized. I have to know what religious denomination, if any. I have to know if the family members are baptized, any children are not baptized. Before I'll even take another step with that person, whoever isn't baptized has to be at least moving in the direction of getting baptized. I won't handle a case without it. And once I get that in the affirmative, then I'm going to look into medical and psychological background. They need to have a complete medical makeup and a complete psychiatric makeup. And I like to speak to the doctor, not the medical doctor so much, if there's a clean bill of health, but I want to speak to the mental health professional that they went to. And any reports that they have, I want to see them. Now everything is confidential, so this information is never released to anybody. Once I get all of that, then I can start looking into the possibility that we're dealing with a genuine possession. If I can get to the person, that's what my formal interview is going to be, in person. I want to be sitting down. I want to be looking in this person's face, and I want to ask them the questions and see their answers. And there are some instances. I'll give you an example. If a person claims that they're possessed, I'm going to speak to the other family members also. Without that person being present, we're going to set up another time, if I feel that's necessary, to ask them, is there any outward manifestations going on in the house? Because it's very rare. It happens, but it's very rare that a person becomes possessed without any external phenomenon taking place. It's not impossible to happen. I've had them. It does happen. It's bam. It's just a possession. There was no external phenomenon, no infestation, no oppression, no obsession, nothing. Right to possession. Don't know why that takes place, but it does. But it is rare for it to happen. If I feel the person is genuinely possessed, then I'll set up an exorcism. I set up an exorcism with Bishop McKenna. These days, I have an exorcist in another state that I can't get to. So I just I set the exorcism up, and Father goes and he does what he has to do.
And you're still very much working with this team. Are you still working with Joe and some of these other people?
No,
or
Joe passed away many years ago.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
Everybody sort of passed away. Father Martin passed away. Bishop McKenna passed away. Ed and Lorraine are gone. So
Right.
it's like I'm feeling the effects of not having that cushion that I used to have back in the day, where I could rely on Bishop McKenna if I fell into trouble, or Father Martin. I don't have that cushion anymore. So it's I rely on God, which is what I'm supposed to do anyway.
Right.
But it still needs to have, those two priests readily available to help me if I needed it.
What are the signs? How does somebody know if they're possessed? Like what kind of information are you trying to pull that would indicate that someone's possessed, or there's how do you determine whether it's infestation, oppression, or possession? How do you determine that?
Well, I mean, it's by the phenomenon that's taken place. An infestation is just that. There is certain phenomenon that we're looking for in the oppression stage, which is that's a two-pronged attack stage. It could be the oppression, meaning the external phenomenon becomes worse than the infestation. But now there's an an obsession. The attacks are internal now. We're talking about spiritual attacks, psychological attacks, sinful attacks, changes in personality, things of that nature. All the while you have all that external oppression going on. It's a very, very tough stage for families and individuals to be in. They know something is going on. There's no subtleness to it like there is in the early stages of infestation. By the time we're in the oppression stage, these folks are hearing, something pounding on the outside of the house that just shakes the whole entire house. It's as if an explosion is going off right outside. We're talking about the possible manifestations that take place. The physical attacks are really very prevalent in the oppression stage. The biting, the kicking, the scratching, the burning, the being pulled from a chair or pulled out of bed, being lifted up and thrown down.
A lot of psychokinetic events like that.
I'm sorry.
I said a lot of psychokinetic events in general. You're like poltergeist. I use that in the quotations.
Yeah,
like phenomenon.
As I explained in my book, I don't like the word poltergeist. It's misleading. These are not ghosts we're dealing with. They were never human beings. These are purely evil. They're purely spirit. And they are fallen angels. Human spirits cannot bring about the phenomenon that the demonic can bring about. Human spirits, look at us physically right now. We're weak as far as the natural order that God instituted. What can we do to it? And that's why I laugh at these global warming people. To think that we can actually affect the world around us on that magnitude is sort of laughable. I mean, talk about pride. That's a prideful being right there. We have angels. God has angels. He has 9 choirs of angels. The angelic choirs govern the seasons. They're in charge of the weather, not us puny human beings. What can we do? And when we die, we don't gain any kind of supernatural or preternatural power. We're still that same weak individual that can't manipulate the natural order that God instituted. Now, the demonic, on the other hand, they're preternatural. They're outside of nature, but they have enough power to manipulate nature. And people don't understand that. They want to play with these things. They have no idea how much power they have. And there's only the only reason why they're in check is because God puts them and keeps them in check. But he's not going to do that for long, forever. He's going to unleash them. And then you're going to see things that you didn't think were possible. Stick around.
Sure, absolutely. I believe everything you just said. So tell us about, if you don't mind, Ralph. Tell us about some cases that really stuck out in your mind. And that noise is getting terrible. I checked my microphone earlier, and I was having this noise. It's crazy. I apologize for deep into this.
Holy water? You got holy water?
I don't. I would use it if I did, because certain times that I don't know, several times that we Greg and Mike can attest to this. We've had the most bizarre technical issues, and I've heard this happening on another talk show actually years ago when they were talking about certain subjects. It would just start like that. I think Art Belly would had some issues like this come up. Yeah. But anyway, I humbly apologize for the noise. We'll just do the best we can. But tell us about some of your cases that really made an impact on you. Like I know that chapter 1, when the case in chapter 1 was unreal. You said, I remember you mentioned in that chapter that this case was really one that made a big impact on you. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about that?
Well, we can talk about that case.
Yes.
The Vellon waivers. I have to think about it because the real name is in my head and his family, and I didn't want to say it. So I have to think for a minute what name I used in the book. So they're the Vellon waivers, and I changed all of their identifying details and characteristics. That was actually that case came into Joe Forrester by an exorcist from another state that we worked with. I never worked with that piece physically, but handled things for him on the periphery. I
Right.
didn't feel comfortable dealing with that priest, and I don't want to go into it, but you know, he's no longer a priest. But he reached out to Joe because the local parish priest had the guts to contact him instead of leaving the family in a lurch. Now, you probably will know who this priest is if I mentioned his name. He's very, very well known. He just had some trouble with Bergoglio a few months back, not Cardinal Burke or Bishop Strickland. There's another priest. I don't want to out him like that, and I have said his name, but I think he's one heck of a priest. He had the guts enough to go to that house and stay there overnight, and actually witness some pretty wild phenomenon that sort of corroborated what the family had told us originally. But this priest wanted us, Joe and I, to go over there and see, if there's any validity to it. He sensed something over the phone. He has psychic ability, this priest. He was known as Father A, actually. He had some psychic ability, and he discerned something while he was on the phone with his family. So he sent Joe and I over there, and we went light. We didn't have all investigators. We had a minimal amount of sacramentals. Normally, when we go to a case, we would go in like the 5th Marine Division with all of their gear,
Right.
Tons of holy water, blessed salt, oil, blessed incense, the whole 9 yards. So, we were just predominantly there to do an interview, a formal interview. And that's what we had done. And there were some things that took place, some outward manifestations. I got caught in the basement, by this thing. And it let me know who it was and what it was. It never manifested physically, but I felt it. I sensed it. It's exactly what we do. It sort of seized me up for a minute, and had me a little off kilter. And that's why it's very dangerous to be involved in this, because, you can't breathe. Your heart is beating. Ed Warren had the same experience in the Amityville house. He described it as somebody putting a hot, wet rag over his face. Now, I don't know if any of you know what the effects of waterboarding is, but that's exactly what it is.
I do. So it feels like you're drowning, but you're not.
Put water on it, and it simulates you drowning.
Yeah.
I didn't have it. I didn't feel a hot rag on my face, wet rag on my face, but I couldn't breathe. I was having trouble, and my heart was just beating way too fast. And I was dizzy, pain in my temple, which I normally got. That was the first thing I noticed, was that pain. And remember, I was relatively new as an investigator at this time. So that was the first time I ever experienced that pain. And I experienced it subsequent many times after, later on, handling cases. Not all, but enough to show a pattern, that this is how I'm affected physically when something is around me. And I was taught very well, by the people around me, that I couldn't speak. So I was taught to envision myself in the Christ light, and that's hard to do sometimes. And if you can't succeed at that, visualize a luminescent cross, a cross of light. And that was enough to actually snap me out of it. And I took the holy water out of my pocket, and I emptied that bottle in that basement.
I'll bet.
As I backed out of it, I didn't turn my back. I walked up the stairs backwards. There was a lot of attacks on those stairs with the family. So I knew that it was a hot spot. And that, that's not the first time I've heard that people on the steps were being, assaulted and pushed. and knocked around while they're on these steps. So that's something that I was used to dealing with. So I backed up, and as soon as I cleared that basement, everything was back to normal. I was fine, and I pulled Joe aside and I let him know what I experienced in the basement, and he handed me a letter that the family had dictated at Father Payne's request. They started to keep a journal of things that was going on, and man, there was one sentence in there that said, at the bottom, it said, "Harm will come to those below, wear the night." So that's where the original book, Beware the Night title came from.
Oh,
So,
really?
Deliverance from Evil is the movie tie-in. So they're the same book. Don't buy both books. Just get the one, Deliverance from Evil.
That's the updated version, basically the first book.
Yeah, well, it's pretty much the same book. Really, the only difference in the differences between the two books is in the first book, there was a dedication to my ex-wife. Well, it ain't in the second book. So, yeah, they are.
Hey, you gotta do what you gotta do.
I trust me, man. I get it, man. I'm divorced too, but fortunately, I got a good one this time. So, anyway, go ahead.
Hey, listen, I don't wish anybody any ill will in this life,
I don't either.
But I can tell you something. If she did call me and say I need some help, I might not be too quick to run over there. I might send others to handle it. But that's the truth. I would not be able to effectively handle a situation like that. I don't know why I just threw that out for argument's sake. I am very willing to not handle certain cases. People got to understand that. A lot of people get mad at me when I tell them, listen, hey, nobody's baptized, go to church, get that done and then call me back. Oh, you're a phony, you're a fraud. I knew you were, you weren't going to help us. Yeah, okay, good luck to you. Click, and that's it. You don't
Right.
listen to my advice. I don't handle your case. You lie to me, I'll leave. I won't handle your case. I'll get up and I'll walk out. I've already done that. If you saw the Demon Files, you know that I am true to my word.
Yes.
Those people lied to me. I found out they lied to me. I told them, if you lied to me, I'm going to end my involvement with you. And they lied to me, and I ended my involvement with them.
I remember that. Was that the family that the dad made a pact with the devil, and he didn't admit it till after you packed up and left?
Yeah.
I saw that. Yeah. Man.
What are you going to do?
Yeah,
That
what are you
was
going to
Woody.
do? Man.
Well, when we did the EVPs, that was one of the questions. Who gave you the authority to attack this family? The demon was truthful. It answered Woody numerous times. Woody is the one who opened up the door and gave it the authority as the head of a household to attack his family. People got to understand this. Demons just don't come out of nowhere and attack people. They need to be invited. That's number one. Number two, you don't have to be the person that invited it in to be attacked by it or affected by it. You just need to provide enough of an opportunity through the lack of spirituality, the lack of your spiritual protection, to have the demonic be attracted to you and attack you. Now, granted, there are people like Annalise Michelle. Understand that. There's no reason for that woman to have become possessed. She was a devout Catholic, prayed the rosary every day, and still, she became possessed. And we don't know why. So
that was a very well documented case too, wasn't it?
Yeah, that poor girl went through hell.
Literally.
Yes, she
Yeah.
did. But you know what? The reason why she went through that is because God wanted to use her to bring the reality of the devil, to people. And she was given a choice. Will end your suffering, meaning they would have taken her to heaven, or she could continue in the suffering and align her will with the will of God, because she knew at this point what God's plan was for her in this situation. And when Scott Derrickson and Paul Boardman, Scott Derrickson, who wrote and directed the Deliver Us from Evil,
Right.
he came to my house, him and Paul Boardman, for about 4 or 5 days. And I had let them hear, I had a 4-minute excerpt of Annalise Michel's exorcism. Now you can hear them online. You couldn't hear those tapes online. They were not online. I obtained a 4-minute excerpt of that tape from Ed Warren, who instructed me not to release it to the public. I have a lot of video that Ed sent me, or gave me rather, where the condition was it doesn't reach the public. And I'm good at my word. It didn't, and it never did. Not on my end.
Sure. Absolutely.
So I let them hear the tape, and Scott looked at Paul and said, "You think that we can recreate that voice?" And I had the book on Annalise Michel, written by the social anthropologist Felicitas Goodman. It was out of print. I had a photocopy of that book, and I handed it to Scott. I said, "Here's the book to that case. Do not lose this. It's the only one I got." Well, he lost it. I didn't find out till years later. He thought he gave it back to me. I'm like, "You never gave me back that book. You lost it." I heard he did an interview, and he described this, what I'm telling you, and he told the interviewer he lost it, but I heard the interview. So I'm like, "That SOB lost my book, and he never got it back." Anyway, so that's when they decided to, do the exorcism of Emily Rose. So I had a very small, part in that movie actually getting made, and I was very happy about that, because that's what God wanted. He wanted the world to hear about her case. Once that movie was made, the whole entire world heard about it. Nobody was sitting down reading the exorcism of Annalise Michel,
Right.
but they went to see the movie.
That girl, man, like Mike, you said it right, man. That girl, it went through literal hell. Like it was horrible what she went through. And it's always been mystifying to me, like you said, because I know that she, she was really young when she was like what, 19, 20 or something like that. Whenever this went down, she was really young.
Very young girl.
Yeah.
College age.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
cool.
there was another movie that was kind of it was a low budget film. It was called The Last Exorcism, I think is what it was.
I remember that.
It came out around the same time that the other movie, not Deliver Us from Evil, but the Emily Rose film. Yeah, that one, it follows like a journalist who's trying to be, like an investigator or something, and he gets involved in an exorcism. I was going to ask if you had any contact or anything with that one too, but apparently not.
Actually, I tell you the truth, I don't watch these movies. I think the last movie I watched in this genre was Insidious. Not Insidious. What was the name of that movie?
Let's see. Sinister.
What?
Insidious.
Nefarious.
Yeah.
I've heard about
Now,
that.
I enjoyed that movie very much, and I'm gonna, I know that was an attorney and a possessed person.
Mm-hmm.
That was more realistic of an exorcism than any of the other crap, including Deliver Us from Evil. I put my own movie in that. All of those exorcisms, I mean, I cringe. I know that the director has to do certain things. I understand that.
Right. They have to
I
like
cringe
make
with
it.
that stuff. I mean, oh my God, this an exorcism in all reality, with the exception of anything physical that takes place, and not all of them are physical, is a battle of wills. That's what it is. You got to realize that the battle between Saint Michael and the fallen angels was not a physical battle. There was no swords and shields and stabbing. These are non-corporal beings. They're spirit. They're pure spirit. It was a battle of wills. That's what it was.
It makes sense.
The will. You got to understand something. The free will that we're given by God is a gift. That's why the communists, the atheists, want to take it away because they know what it is. They don't want anybody exercising the gift of free will. It's probably one of the most awesome gifts that we can ever receive, with the exception of eternal salvation. But I'm talking about in the course of life, the journey of life. Free will is the biggest gift that we can be given because it gives us the freedom to do what makes us happy. To follow our dreams, and of course to follow God. That's what He made us for in the first place, to worship Him. You think He didn't need to make us? He has plenty of angels to worship Him, but He wanted humanity. He wanted to make a creature prone to falling be raised up and obtain eternal salvation with Him in heaven for all eternity. And that's one of the reasons why there's many reasons why the devil hates us. That's one of the reasons why, is because God raised us up as high as He did. That Lucifer says, hey, wait a minute, what the heck are you talking about? Nobody should be raised up higher than me. God revealed some of His plan to Lucifer, and one of this was to raise up the incarnate Word and the woman, humanity. And Lucifer says, hell no. And this is where it turned into blasphemy. This is where Lucifer actually sinned, when he said, hell no, I'm going to crush that woman and her seed. And that's when God threatened him and says, well, I'm going to put enmity between her seed and your seed, and she'll crush your head, and you'll lie in wait for her heel. And it was from that moment that St. Michael rose up, and Lucifer and the rebellious angels were cast out of the empyrean heavens. There was no beatific face of God. There was no fight in heaven. Lucifer never gazed upon the beatific face of God, and the rebellious angels didn't either, and they never will, all eternity. Only the angels that accepted to follow God's will actually gaze upon the beatific face of God. This was all done in the empyrean heavens. And when Lucifer was cast out of the heavens, he was given this planet to rule. And then God put all of us on it to defeat him, to join in his victory over defeating Lucifer. And then we know Adam and Eve. I could sit here for about a week and go through all of this stuff. So you better ask me another question.
Sure, it's all good. We're approaching. It's about 15 till. I want to open this up to my co-host to let them ask more questions. Greg, we'll start with you, man.
I'm gonna step away for a second.
Well, I was going to ask though, but you already answered the question.
Oh,
like,
okay.
The movie usually involve like demonic possession, like how realistic that it would be to how what you experienced. But like you said, they're just far, far, far from it.
I'm having a hard time understanding you.
Yeah, this noise is terrible. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
It's weird.
I couldn't understand you.
But all I was gonna say was that. Okay, my headphones are bad. I have a very bad mic.
That's okay, Greg.
So I'll
We'll
just go to Michael instead.
okay. All right.
Okay. Well, let's see if it does it with me. Is it doing the crackle with me too?
No.
Yeah, everybody's got that.
Yeah,
that
it's still
crackling.
doing it.
I don't know. Do I
Wow.
have it? Am I crackling?
No, you
I
not at
can't
all.
tell who it is.
Hey guys, you guys are crackling. I ain't crackling, so I don't know
Yeah.
what's going on there. You know.
Yeah, I've never had this specific problem before. I'm really sorry about this to everybody.
Hey, listen, man. Hey, it's better to crackle here than crackle in hell. All right, so it's all good. Don't
Good
worry
way to look
about
at it. Go ahead, Mike. You're muted, brother. Hang on.
Yep.
That's weird. You're muted.
Okay,
There we go. There we go. We're good.
All right. Yeah, I was going to ask, since your experience as an exorcist and things like that, and you were talking about how Hollywood treated it as crap. But how do you view the way that they basically glamorize how exorcism and everything is presented? Like, how do you feel about how they present that to people?
Well, first, I'm not an exorcist. I never was. I never claimed to be an exorcist. I'm a religious demonologist. I just want to clarify that.
Okay. Sorry.
Sure.
My bad.
But
fair enough, man.
They have to sensationalize it. That's why people are going to go to the movie in the first place. The jump scares. People like to be scared when they're safe. They're in the audience. They see all kinds of stuff, and it's fun. It's not like that in real life. The movies have to present something for the audience, and that's what they demand. You got to understand that if they showed a real exorcism, I think half the audience would really not understand what's going on between the priest and the exorcist. It's in Latin. They wouldn't even understand what was being said. So it would be very anticlimactic to see something like that. So I, on the other hand, prefer more of a dialogue in an exorcism scene, and that's why Nefarious was, great as far as I'm concerned, because of the dialogue that was going on. It revealed that the writer understood the dynamic between the devil, God, and humanity. He had a very, very good base for it. And there are a lot of movies over the years. I'll give you one example, The Devil's Advocate. The plot line to that, aside from all the stuff going on, was basically the devil is in human form here on Earth, which can never be. It'll never happen. Affecting the criminal justice system. Well, you can see a lot of that going on right now, because we have a lot of DAs that are not prosecuting some very bad people and allowing them to end up on the street and remain on the street, which is the premise of The Devil's Advocate. That's what the devil was attempting to do. And do you remember the last thing that Al Pacino said in that movie?
Yeah.
Daddy, I love it.
He looked directly in the camera and said, "Free will, it's a bitch," just like that.
Right.
Because he cannot manipulate free will. The devil cannot touch a person's free will. Not even God manipulates or interferes with a person's free will. So the way he said it could have two meanings to it. Like our free will. Man, we have free will to end up in hell if we want, or we can end up in heaven. Or free will, man, I can't touch it, so it's a bitch. You could try to figure that one out. And that was the beauty in the writing. You got to understand the dynamic of free will in relation to us, God, and the devil. So things like that, those types of movies I could really get into. They're not over the top.
Mm-hmm.
You just saw a little bit, of the characters, a little bit of when their faces changed to show the demonic possession, because that's what they are. They're not demons, they're possessed. The devil never walks the face of the earth in human form except through possession of the Antichrist. That's the only time he'll walk as closely as a human being can get on this earth, is during the reign of the Antichrist.
Good question. I want to kind of wrap this up because we're having so many technical issues. But if you could leave us with one thing, one thought for final thought, what would you leave us with?
You need a relationship with God. Forget about everything else. It really doesn't matter, except for our personal relationship with God. Now, as a traditional Catholic, to me, it's not just proclaiming that I love Jesus and I follow Jesus. There's a lot more that goes with it. Keeping the Sabbath day holy, receiving the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ in the Holy Eucharist every Sunday and holy days of obligation, praying the rosary, saying my prayers. And, if you can't say a formal prayer like a rosary or just talk to God, that's
Right.
a prayer. Those, I would have to say that just talking to God would probably be a more satisfying prayer to him than maybe a formalized prayer like the Our Father, because you're talking from the heart. When you pray, formalized prayers coming from your brain, but when you talk to God, you're talking to him from the heart. And I don't know if you read it, but I say that thought has substance. I don't know if you've gotten to that case yet, where I can actually prove that theory on thought having substance. What did you ever think about somebody and have them call you a day or two later? Did you ever experience that?
Oh yeah.
Couple of times.
When you think of somebody, you connect to that person, and it has substance. So when you pray, you connect directly to God. It's right from you to him, and you're making a connection. You're actually touching God at that point when you talk to him from your heart. So I recommend that. And you gotta align your will with God's will. If we live in the flesh, we're going to die. If we live in the spirit, we have a better chance of obtaining eternal life, because we are a duality. We are spiritual beings and we are physical beings. And like I said, if you allow the spirit to be led by the physical, you're not making it into heaven. What are we told in Scripture? We're not fighting against flesh and blood enemies. We're fighting against beings that are very, very evil, and they're very, very powerful, and they're very, very intelligent. So they're going to lead you astray if you live that way. And, I think the last bit of, I don't want to get too preachy, the last bit of advice, when God says to put on the whole armor of God, that we are fighting against spirits, well, we are fighting more of a war against ourselves. We should be fighting against ourselves to temper the materialistic aspects that we tend to crave as physical beings, all the physical comforts, big cars, big houses, big jewelry, lots of money,
Right.
Everything is insured to the hilt, except for the soul. Nobody's doing anything for the soul. It's your most prized possession. In fact, it's the only thing we really have, because everything around us, eventually, it returns to the dust that it came from. Everything around us came from this earth. And when it's done, it'll return to the earth, just like our physical bodies. Every Ash Wednesday, we're reminded that from dust we came, and to dust we shall return. And that's why Catholics get the ashes on our forehead. It's a reminder to let us know that our lifetime is short, and this physical aspect of us is going to eventually die, that our spirit is what we need to lead our lives with. And if we're not doing that, you're not getting into heaven. It's impossible. It's not going to happen. Don't be surprised.
Oh,
that's it.
Powerful words.
I'm sorry, I don't want to get too preachy, but you asked.
No, we want to hear it from your. I appreciate you giving it to us real and unedited and telling us how it is, man. That's what how we learn from one another.
I feel sorry for all of you guys. I had men like Father Martin and Bishop McKenna, and you got guys like me. The dregs of the barrel, as far as I'm looking at it. We're in the end times. What's at the end of the barrel of wine? It's the dregs, right? And that's the way I look at it. There's nothing more. They took the Protestants like to talk about by faith alone. The Catholics, we say faith and good works. No, it's impossible to do good works because we're just humans. What they're not understanding is that our good works are done in the name of God. Our good works are done with the graces of God. And that's what St. Paul is referring to. When you go to a soup kitchen and you feed the hungry, that's a good work. You're more beneficial. It would be more beneficial or efficacious to you if you're doing that in the name of God, in the name of Jesus Christ. We don't do anything in our own name. We do everything in the name of Jesus. When we operate, when we go through our daily life, we force God to take a hand in everything that we do. Like Father Martin said, God didn't wind us up like little wind-up boys and let us off to 7, 10, 50, 60, 100 years. He has to energize us in order for us to be animated, because the Latin word for soul is anima, and the word animation comes from that.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Our soul is what animates us. So when we perform an action, whether it's good or bad, if it's good, well, we have God operating with us. But when we commit sin, well, we have God operating with us also. And those sins put his son up on the cross. So think about that for a little bit. We force God through our free will to take part in our sin, the sins that put his son on a cross. So we have to stop sinning.
Yeah. Whatever draws us closer to the Lord. I personally agree with that. And Ralph, I appreciate you being so patient with us, and thank you for your remarks and telling us about your life. And I hope if anybody gets anything out of this, maybe to be more hyper aware of what's going on in the world, and be on guard at all times. And I really appreciate it.
Most people aren't going to have any kind of outward manifestations with the devil, but he's certainly operating, behind the scenes in the shadows. There's no way that he's allowing anybody to be left alone, except for those that are in habitual sin. He doesn't need to do anything with them. They're doing all his work for him. But other than that, the devil is always out there trying to inspire us away off the path of righteousness and off the path of being in a state of grace.
Wow.
And I know all of this, and I still sin. So I'm not talking to anybody from a position of great authority. I'm a sinner, and that's all I am. I never make claim to anything other than that. I'll go out and I'll commit 10 sins probably before I go to sleep tonight. Well, I'm exaggerating, but you get the
Right.
point.
Exactly.
I'm not that bad, I'm not that bad. Not yet.
I don't think you are. I don't think we don't think that, man. I want to encourage everybody to check out his book, Deliverance from Evil. I started reading it like early this morning, and I haven't been able to put it down. Every waking moment, just about, I spent reading this book, and it's incredible. Ralph, I can't thank you enough for being patient with us today and taking your time to be with us. It's been a pleasure having you, sir.
Thanks for inviting me. Thanks for inviting me on.
Thanks for coming on.
God be with you, my friend. Take care. And you
stay safe.
You too. And you're listening to What Lies Beyond. We'll be back probably next week. I'll make an announcement when we're going to be back. Before we cut it off, though, let's take a short break, and I want to have Michael. I want to have you get us up to speed on the UFO news. So why don't we take a 5-minute break, and we'll come back and we'll wrap things up with that.
All right.
All right. We'll be back in 5.
Here I am on the road again. There I am, up on the stage. There I go, playing star again. There I go, turn the page. Yeah. Well, that was pretty neat. Anybody out there still hanging with us or watching and chilling and all that good stuff? You know, Ralph Sarchie. Pretty great guy. I've been meaning to pick up his book and read it. I just haven't had the time. I've been doing that thing with the stuff in the sky. You know what I'm saying? But yeah. Boo boo. Whoop wee whoop wee.
Man, that was so weird, man. When he
you know what's even weirder?
What?
As soon as he left, it stopped.
Yeah, it stopped. It's like we've had technical issues before, but that I can tell. I've gotten to where I can tell a little bit about what type of noise that was. I don't think that was like. It sounded like a cackling type noise at moments. It was really strange.
Like somebody in the background is like, with some paper and they're like,
yeah.
Yeah.
You see, the same thing happened on Coast to Coast AM one time. Art Bell, or it was either Coast to Coast or Midnight in the Desert. Art was interviewing some guy, and I don't remember all the details, but the whole conversation, this stuff would these sounds would manifest, and it was just so bizarre. It was just absolutely freaking bizarre. Man. But anyway, we'll wait for Greg to get back, and we'll get started again.
Yeah.
And we'll finish up.
We're still live, apparently. So that's
cool. We're live.
Yeah. But yeah, there's been some really, like, we had a good couple of weeks where I would say about 3 weeks, pretty much in the interim where we had, our last episode and everything. where nothing was really going on. You know, the Congress was having the reinstatement of their new, you know, head congressperson, and you know, things were pretty quiet, so to speak. And then, like, within the last week and a half, man, shit has been hitting the fucking fan, man. And first of all, starting with Colin Kelleher and James Lukatsky and George Knapp. They had a new book that come out recently. I have a copy of it. It's in the car. But Lukatsky was talking about, in the book now, talking about how he was with a bunch of guys that were, you know, overseeing and detailing some materials that they had acquired. And he was privy to seeing a craft that they've had for, I would say, probably 10 years, 10 to 15 years. And they have been completely unable to open it. And at the time of him writing that, of them writing and putting that book together, they finally got it cracked open. And they got in it. And they removed the pilot bodies and things like that out of it, and found that basically this craft, everything in this craft is basically connected to this kind of a halo that they put on someone's head, or the pilot's themselves head. And from what they could tell, everything in this craft is powered psychically.
So, like telekinesis?
Yeah.
You think?
Yeah, they're using their brains to operate this craft, as well as the fact of having people in the pilot seats, so to speak. They're like, well, why don't we try this thing to see if we can get this? Because the craft is still kind of running kind of in sleep mode, I guess. And as soon as they had 4 people sitting in all the seats and they put this halo on their freaking heads, the craft started to wake up.
No way.
Yeah,
Seriously.
So kind of in a way, not only is everything being controlled, you know, mentally in this craft, they're also the bodies present in the seats are also acting as kind of like the positive negative connection for like the battery to start. And basically the electricity from brain waves and everything like that was also aiding and powering the vehicle, which it would freaking nuts.
You know, that opens up a big can of worms with me, because, you know, I've for many years I've studied parapsychology, and we have proven in laboratory that abilities like telekinesis, remote viewing, or clairvoyance, all the stuff is real. And I firmly believe, based on the data, the data that we have, the little bit of data we have, laboratory backed science, that I'm convinced that every human being has this, is capable of it. But I think some of us are naturally more adept. I think it's a gift from God. That's just my humble opinion. I think that anybody can be. We proved in a laboratory to some degree, at least one or another, that every people are be able to train to use these types of abilities and stuff like that. And that makes sense what you're saying, because
And Dr. Greer was talking about too how they were, you know, having people in a room and everyone was thinking, you know, using, you know, basically tapping into their consciousness and everything like that. And they were starting to affect the algorithm on a random number generator.
Yeah.
And
that's fascinating.
Like that. But even further into the other stuff, you know, where, anybody that may be coming back to watch, welcome back. Here we are, finally.
Right.
But other things have been happening where there's just been this explosion kind of stuff going on, and now we're dealing with, they've had video come out of a craft that some pilots released that was like a metallic cube that was basically riding alongside an airplane that was transporting some people and stuff like that. Sean Kirkpatrick, the head of the Aero office, has officially and completely stepped down based on, he says that he has pretty much, done what he set out to do. And he released a report last month corroborating and showing that the things that he has finally, investigated and such, corroborating a lot of the testimony that the whistleblowers gave at the UAP conference and congressional hearing that they had, where Grush and Graves and what's his name, Fravor and David Fravor were at as the witnesses and whistleblowers for that, and that they had 250 initial reports that they were investigating and stuff like that, and they found that 175 of those could not be explained whatsoever.
Wow.
Dealing with craft that were exhibiting erratic flight patterns, supersonic or subsonic speeds, and a lot of the other things that he was looking at, that there is something to what Grush had come out and spoken about. So, and now they're dealing also with a bunch of corroboration with, they're finding what appears to be, they found some USOs, like unidentified submersible objects, that have been congregating heavily in an area off the coast of Alaska. And they're picking up like weird lights under the water and stuff like that. And a lot of these UAP are congregating and going in and out of the water in that area. So they think that there's bases underwater there.
I think there are bases everywhere underwater.
Yeah.
Greg, what do you think about that? Greg.
Greg, you there?
Cool,
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm there.
Yeah. What do you
That's pretty cool.
let's see what else have they got going on now. Grush, like Burchett, finally got into a skiff with the Pentagon, but he came out of it completely nonplussed about it, because they're basically just trying to feed in the same crap that they've always been able to feed. But one of the things that they were having problems with was getting Grush into a skiff, because apparently they were having problems with him not having his clearances, because he's a civilian now, basically.
So they did revoke his
when he retired, they took his clearances and everything,
right,
as part of the retaliation against him for making the reports that he did. But they had somebody speaking for him. His lawyer got a hold of some people, and they went before a committee, and now Grush has all of his clearances back. They gave him back all of his clearances, and he's getting ready now to go into a skiff with Burchett, Rubio, and anybody willing.
This will be the second skiff, right? Because they already had one.
They had one with Burchett and the Pentagon themselves.
Okay.
that did not involve Grush because he was doing other things at the
Right.
time. But now they're looking at going in with Grush in a skiff detailing all of the things that he is giving to Congress, the locations of things, who has them, given the names and the, where'd you go, Mark? There you are.
Sorry. My cat jumped on my keyboard.
But they're getting ready to go in with him as early as January.
Okay.
And also with a lot of that, Dr. Stephen Greer is getting ready to hand Congress everything that has to do with the 400 terabytes of testimony, video, photographs, and everything that they have to go in with Grush with that. Now they're also, apparently we're going back to the moon.
Oh yeah, when is that going to happen?
January 25th is apparently when we're going back to the moon.
Holy crap, man! I knew that they were talking about going back.
Yeah, but, with Artemis and stuff like that. Yeah, but apparently there's also been a lot of testimony and information that is coming out too with a lot of the whistleblowers, because they're gearing up for what looks to be another 17 to 25 hearings with witnesses and informants and things like that.
This is going to be a time-consuming process too.
Yeah,
this is going to take some time. So I think what we need to do, if I had my say, I think we need to just let the process unfold for right now. And, that's kind of what I think, because I do think that aren't they, this congressional group, aren't they supposed to release some I know they've kind of gone on record since then and said that we're going to release more information soon, or we're trying to, or something. What's the story with all that?
Right now they're in terms of releasing more information on the subject proper. Right now there are 2 pieces of legislation that are being submitted. One of them is coming from Schumer, and Schumer is going for one to where it's going to be full blown, open the vault, here you go.
Right.
But Burchett, on the other hand, wants to kind of do that as well, but he wants more of a controlled disclosure in terms of, basically spilling the beans about, the idea of extraterrestrials or interdimensional beings and non-human intelligences being amongst us, as well as...
Keep talking. I got to take my cat outside.
Huh?
I got to take my cat outside. Keep talking.
Okay. But they're basically about getting people ready for the idea of them being around us, that they exist, that the government does in fact have all of these craft and bodies, and they've been reverse engineering things, but they want to keep some of that information basically in terms of things that can be weaponized. Hush hush, as kind of an idea of, of course, because they're also pushing the whole narrative of, it's a major national security issue, because we don't want our enemies to know where we are technologically, but we want to know where they are, stuff like that. But we don't want anybody jumping the gun on us.
Right.
Because everything that we're finding now, which has been stated in the Arrow report that came out, all of the cases that they could not find to be, explainable are not ours, according to informants and information that they can get from people they have seeded in other countries in our adversaries programs. It's not theirs. So who the hell is it?
Right. My biggest fear is that, honestly, one of my biggest fears is that some of these UAPs or UFOs might be like a foreign adversary that's gotten a hold of something and reverse engineered or something. That's like my biggest fear, honestly.
Well, all of the information that they're gathering so far it's not the Russia, China. It's not them at all.
I don't think it is too.
They are kind of pushing the idea that it's not just limited to being extraterrestrial. There's a lot of things that are pushing also towards, interdimensionality.
Yeah.
And two, like Biden is now preparing to he's come out now and said that he is in favor of signing into law these whistleblower protections and
I hope
aiding
so.
in the disclosure and everything like that.
Gosh, I hope they do.
He stated previously that he didn't want to do that. He did not want to do that at all. But now he's all for it. So, but yeah, man. I mean, there's just so much stuff going on right now, and a lot of things are being corroborated and pinpointed. Of like, this is the deal. But like I said earlier, or I was going to say earlier too, there's been testimony and stuff like that has come out stating that sometime in 2024 that an event will take place where there is beyond a shadow of a doubt that we are not alone. And it seems kind of funny that pretty much as soon as those statements were made, now we're going back to the moon.
Man, I tell you what, that's fishy, man.
Yeah, where there was a guy who, like a year ago, was working. You remember when they were talking about like receiving all these weird signals and stuff from space?
Refresh our memory on that.
Yeah, they were receiving, like NASA and everything was stating that they were receiving a bunch of like, burst repeating signals and stuff like that from deep space.
Okay.
Well, they had one of their guys that, handles those types of things, go in and start triangulating, where you could kind of pinpoint where it may have came from, based on like signal trajectory or something, using some type of like scalar radar or something. I don't know how that works, but he triangulated it that a lot of those signals, some of them, yeah, like the wow from like 76 and stuff like that, of course, but a lot of the ones that they were getting that were like fast repeating burst signals were coming from a more localized area and not interstellar,
Right.
So he basically triangulated it and he pinpointed it as basically the only feasible place it could be coming from was the moon. And then they fired him. And he hasn't been heard from or seen since.
Dang. That's creepy, man. I hope the guy's still alive, and I hope they didn't like hurt him and it was his family, because I would put him past it.
But now they're also, NASA is finding massive heat sources within basically the center of the moon that have recently started warming up. The moon is exhibiting tectonic shifts when there's no tectonic plates or anything on the moon. Because I'm sure you probably, you've heard the story where, they did the seismic tests or whatever, and
the seismic
landed things on the moon, and then the moon vibrated like it was a bell,
like a bell. Yeah, I remember hearing about that.
And they're like, well, it's either extremely cavernous or it's hollow. Well, now, like I said, they're discovering massive heat and electrical sources within the moon that are warming up or whatever. We're receiving strange signals from the moon. You're having some kind of strange tectonic shifts and things like that can't be explained because the moon doesn't have any of that.
Right.
So
what's causing it,
Yeah. And now we're all of a sudden, after the last time we were on the moon was Apollo 11 was Neil and Buzz and Collins. 2014, 15, something like that. Anyway, it's been a while. And a lot of people say, well, the reason we haven't gone back was because we were told not to. You know, if information given to people that they've stated to be true.
We lost Mike. Oh, hang on. Let me send him another. There he goes.
Back.
Welcome back.
Yeah. We're just having all kinds of weirdness tonight, aren't we?
I'm telling you, it's certain topics that we cover. Like in the past, it's always every time I've had some weird technical issues, not to the extreme we had tonight, but in the past, it's been certain subjects, especially when we talk about like stuff like demonology. When I've talked about that a little bit in the past, and a lot of times it's UFO stuff that really. But anyway, continue. Sorry,
but if the testimony from people saying that we were told not to come back is true, then now all of a sudden we have the clearance to go back because again, going back to things that other whistleblowers and people that would probably know have said. John Ramirez, who was he's a retired CIA operative. He retired, I think, in 2009, or it was either 99 or 2009, one of the two. And he came out recently in an interview. I'll see if I can't find that. Actually, sure. It is on YouTube, and I'll send you the link for it.
Please do.
And he details in that in 2017, and this was also corroborated by an Israeli military space advisor, that Haim Eshed was his name, and he's an old guy now. He's like 87 or something, and he was constantly, after his career had ended, he constantly talked about there being a galactic confederacy or some type of tribunal, galactic senate, if you will, to borrow from Star Wars. And they basically got a bunch of world leaders together for a summit and told them, you've got 10 years to begin preparing humanity for us being alongside you.
That's wow. That's chilling. I find that chilling for some reason. I don't know why. I just found that chilling.
So now, here as we're approaching 2027, and now, all of a sudden, as soon as these things apparently happen within 6 months after this supposed alleged summit, then we start getting the videos for the Go Fast and the gimbal and the Tic Tac.
Right.
And where, the secret of Skidwalker Ranch and all of these things are coming, to the fore, where it seems that everything these guys are saying in terms of little bits of disclosure and information to kind of condition people to the idea, hey, this is actually what's going on.
Right.
Kind of, planting the seed in people's brains so that they're not totally freaked the hell out when, the delegates from Epsilon Iota 24 show up and say, hey guys, what's going on?
Right. Let's try to get Brandon Frugal to come on the show. I'm going to reach out to him. I don't know. He's a big, busy guy. He's always, he's got that. He's a real estate tycoon. He's got all these. He's an American success story. If you think about it, he quite an interesting guy, very interesting guy. And I like how he's, he took what Robert Bigelow did and made it completely public. Mm-hmm. And I still, at this point, though, I'm sure in some way, I'm sure I would be willing to bet that Brandon Frugal has some sort of security clearance. Mm-hmm. I would think so, because for years the Army and CIA have been out there to look at this place, and the anomalies that they've been experiencing, especially the UFO over the calf incident. Man, that was just incredible, mind blowing.
Well, that was something else too that I forgot to tell you about too.
Yeah, I didn't mean to get us off the beaten path.
No. This was something that recently I rediscovered because it's something that happened a little while ago.
Sure.
But you know how on that show they talk about that they have the triangle, right? Where they keep having really strange electromagnetic, anomalies, as well as, frequencies that are like 1.6 gigahertz keeps popping up every time that they instigate activity on the ranch. Well, apparently they have discovered what appears to be a portal and an object that is sitting at about 3,000 feet off the ground.
Wow.
Like they've shot laser, optical lasers and stuff toward it, and you can literally see them refract off of it in split second hairs. Before
does it bend it, or does it reflect it off
it
completely?
reflects it off.
Okay.
And then it either bends it around or it reflects it. And then as soon as it reflects it, it shifts itself to where it looks like it stops reflecting it.
Wow.
You know,
Holy crap, man. That's insane.
Even in one episode that I was watching, they had the helicopter over the area and they were dropping things out of the helicopter. And I wish I could get a hold of the people making that show to talk to them, because you could watch that episode where it shows the camera underneath the helicopter, but when they're flying above where this object is supposed to be sitting, you can clearly, literally see on TV where everything underneath looks like it's in a vortex beneath the helicopter. And
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody has caught that or whatever, but every time I've watched that episode and I point it out to people and they're like, holy shit, man, like what is that? So we're gearing up toward huge things.
I don't know who or what's behind this phenomenon. I don't claim to know, and if we all want to be honest, none of us really know. But one thing I can say for certain is there's a lot of I believe this phenomenon is 100% interdimensional. I don't see how like the way that these objects are able to seemingly bend our laws of physics. At least it seems to. There's all this phenomenon that's associated with it. You got, a lot of the same stuff that happens in hauntings happens in the UFO phenomenon, if you think about it.
Yeah.
Like electromagnetic interference or electronic interference. That's a very common thing. Some people have remarkable paranormal phenomenon that happens before and after the experience as well. That's been fairly well documented. Not like Dr. Remember we had Dr. Taft on Project Stargate last year for the second or third time. I want him to come back whenever he gets close to finishing his new book that he's been working on for a while. But at any rate, he talked about that in at length, especially the second time around. The second time I had it, we interviewed him.
Yeah.
And but yeah, man.
Well,
I think,
like, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I just think it's all interdimensional. I think that there's so much paranormal phenomenon associated with UFOs. I mean, just the fact that these devices or craft or whatever they are can take off at 12,000 miles an hour and make a sharp angle turn without stopping. No biological creature could survive that. It's just impossible with our physics. Yeah.
Well, not exactly with our physics, but our understanding of physics.
That's true.
Is probably a better way to put that, because it's like when Ben Rich made the statement, we have the technology to take ET home.
Right. He did.
Someone made the statement, that everything exists at the same point in time. Just on different wavelengths of frequency, which science is showing that, reality or whatever is made up of frequencies, and different wavelengths of color and things like that. So basically, just because something is say as an example, something is something is like one of us, something like somebody like us is sitting on TRAPPIST-3 right now, right? So their idea of how physics and wormholes and things like that work, so basically say I exist here and there at the same time. It just has figuring out how to get those two wavelengths to coexist with each other. But everything exists at the same point. You just have to figure out how to jump to that next layer.
Right.
So say that these entities, for lack of a better word, have the ability to, jump to those layers of frequency. Our understanding of how physics work and their understanding of how physics works being that, they're probably 500 million years ahead of us in terms of technology. Just a random ballpark number. But a lot of technologies that they're finding now, especially with some of the craft that have apparently been found, which a lot of the documents that have come out here recently, they were talking about that the government is in possession of 9 craft. Well, Ross Coulthart has stated that he's got testimony and documentation from other people involved very deep in these projects that we're dealing with like quad numbers of craft here in the US alone.
So in the thousands?
Yeah. Whether they have something, according to Coulthart, he made a statement that we have in like the triple digits of whole craft, but we have quad digits of pieces of things left and remains, like the hull of something because it got so torn up when it crashed or whatever.
Right.
And they have whole craft which are completely freaking seamless. So it's like the idea that this object was 3D printed around.
Yeah, it's like a mold. It was molded and perfectly produced in some way. It's really bizarre.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and and I can attest to that because one of my experiences, where I was, everything was one seamless curvature. Everything was connected to one thing or another. There's no sharp edges on anything. And like if I'm laying on a table, it completely slopes into the floor and the walls and everything around it.
That's crazy. And another thing I'd like to add to that, if you don't mind, the one thing that I've seen this come up a few times in some of the in the past, with some cases I researched, but like sometimes people would get taken into a craft or whatever, and inside of it, it's like time and space is manipulated or changed or something, because like it's much bigger and more broad inside. That seems to like a 15-foot, 20-foot craft that some people claim that they saw and were allegedly taken in. I find that interesting.
It's like Doctor Who.
Exactly.
TARDIS. It's bigger on the inside than the outside.
I love Doctor Who. Oh my gosh, I love Tom Baker's my favorite though.
Yeah, like he'll always be my favorite. Would you like some jelly babies?
Yeah. Greg, you watch Doctor Who, right? Greg, I think he's having audio problems. Anyway. Doctor Who. I like Tom Baker. He was awesome. All the Doctor Who, really most of the Doctor Who's I like the guy that came out in the early 2000s on Sci-Fi Channel.
Oh, David, Chris Eccleston or David Tennant.
David Tennant.
Okay,
that's my man. He's my second favorite. I just like how whimsical he was. It's almost like they took Willy Wonka and Doctor Who and kind of mashed it together. But Tom Baker was also kind of whimsical too. So I think they both played the part really well. I really do.
Yeah.
It's cool, man.
Yeah, they just recently had their 60th anniversary here a couple weeks ago.
Wow, no kidding, man.
Yep.
Arguably
And
one of the best sci-fi shows of all time. Like it's
and
up there in the top 5.
They brought David Tennant back for some reason, but I haven't really watched anything. But apparently, David Tennant, the doctor after the female doctor that they had recently, she regenerated into David Tennant. But apparently, he's like, "Why am I back?" But apparently, David Tennant is going to regenerate into the first ever African American or African doctor.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's
Which,
pretty cool.
I'm all for it either way. People were freaking out that, there was, it was so terrible that Jodie Whittaker was, the doctor. And I'm like, why? Why is that a bad thing? The doctor can be whoever the doctor needs to be.
Yeah, it's like a multiverse thing, right? Yeah, that makes sense to me. I'd be interested in seeing how that works out. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's like the same thing when they remade the Ghostbusters with an all-female cast. I have no problem with the actresses they chose. I thought they did a pretty good job with the roles that they were given. The problem was that the movie was fucking terrible.
Yeah, it was a good movie. It was a bad Ghostbusters movie. And it had nothing to do with them being women. To me, it was just like there's so many missed opportunities in that movie that could, especially the ending. Ending really kind of threw me off.
And everything in it that you could tell that was like deliberately edited, because you would have a couple of scenes where they were literally going in and talking about the previous Ghostbusters, where they're in the mayor's office and the mayor's like, this has happened before and we've done everything we could to, shut everybody up about it. And they're like, what do you mean this happened before? And then deliberate cut, and then next thing you know, now there's Men in Black looking guys in the office saying you can't talk about that.
Makes sense that the Men in Black would be involved in it because they don't just go after UFO stuff. They go like cryptids and all kinds of weird stuff. They're associated with all sorts of paranormal phenomenon.
Yeah. Speaking of weird crap like that, I was driving through town on my way home today.
Okay, do tell.
There was a guy walking in the crosswalk, and he's wearing like a scally cap and a scarf and tight jacket and blue jeans, and he's carrying a basket with a bunch of weird stuff in it. And I didn't grab my phone fast enough to take a picture of him, but the guy didn't have a face.
That's creepy. That is so creepy, man. We're getting into like the Men in Black and Black-Eyed Children type phenomenon, man. That's like, creepy.
That's like the same thing. There was a girl that worked in a gas station here in town.
Mm-hmm.
And, one day, I went in to get some cigarettes, and a soda, she's cute, and I'm like, hey, how's it going? Doing
sure.
All right, and she looked at me, and she kind of blushed for a second. And when she blushed, she blinked and then blinked, like she blinked her eyelids and then her pupils blinked.
That's crazy.
And I was like, did I just see what I thought I saw, And then when I got home, and I made a post about it on Facebook, talking about the weirdest thing I've seen today is when you're talking to the cute girl on the counter at the gas station, and she blinks at you twice. And a bunch of people were like, "What do you mean she blinked at you twice?" And I'm like, "Nah, dude, she like blinked and then blinked.
She's smiling at you, Beavis."
Yeah. But anyway, I mean, that's what I got, and of course, I'll stick to the hot sheets and all that stuff.
Well, you've done a great job keeping our group page going, and you really, you're one of the best researchers I've ever known, and I'm really grateful for you and Greg have contributed to our program over the years, both of our programs. I'm going to still keep. I want to make a quick announcement as far as what I've decided to do with Project Stargate, Fringe Research. I'm going to still make episodes for that pre-recorded. They will all be pre-recorded probably, or most of them will.
Okay.
But I'm going to use that to interview people in certain types of interviews, certain situations that I think that where I don't have to do it live. I can, if they don't have time, like to be up late at night, I'm going to use it for some of those interviews and stuff, and some things that I may want to tackle by myself or whatever.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that too. Like, just to jump on there and say, I want to talk about this that I just learned about, see what people think about it, comment or whatever. Would that be cool too? Or
yeah, absolutely, man.
Okay.
So we'll once I get my act to go with that, I'll make another announcement and I'll tell you guys about it. But at any rate, man, I enjoyed being with y'all tonight. Thank you for everybody who's tuned in, and if you're catching this on the flip side, I hope that you are able to check out our guest, Ralph Sarchie. He was a great guy. Glad to have him on our show. Really enjoyed the interview, despite all the weird technical hiccups we had. I feel bad for him. I hate that happened. But
it's really weird. He left and it stopped.
Yeah, it is weird, and but I really enjoyed being with y'all, and we'll make an announcement really soon of what we're going to do next on What Lies Beyond. Then we'll put out another broadcast within the next 2 weeks. We'll before the holidays, before the Christmas holiday. We'll get back on board. But at any rate, we'll make some announcements really soon, and really appreciate you and Greg. Appreciate y'all being with us, and to all of you out there, God bless. Take care of yourself and take heed. Good night.
Good night.